Okay, so this is your pointer.
Okay.
Unless you want to use the map.
Probably want to use the pointer, I'll just use the back and forth.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to introduce Michael Cohen, who apparently met Lisa at a think tank breakfast, is what I could say about it. But Michael Cohen was a Wall Street corporate lawyer initially, and then he went to Harvard as an assistant professor of medicine, and also was an adjunct professor at the Harvard School of Public Health. He's very prolific. He's authored 6 books on healthcare law and policy, and he's authored hundreds of articles on this topic. And he's particularly interested in complementary and alternative medicine, as I understand, and we actually have connected and realized that we have a really good common friend. But the talk is actually a little bit, so I guess it's ubiquitous healthcare, which I don't think we had in the title, or lawyers versus the singularity, who wins. And so I'm not sure if anyone had a clue what that's about, and we'll find out now.
So I'm glad I intrigued you. Thank you so much for inviting me to Stanford School of Medicine to give this presentation. So if people know what lawyers are, we'll find out what the singularity is. So we are moving toward a new paradigm of healthcare for humanity and the planet. This is a quote from the brochure for a conference where I spoke Saturday from the Academy of Integrative and Holistic Medicine. So clearly the orientation is toward a new paradigm of health from the perspective of integrative medicine, which combines conventional care and evidence-based complementary medicine, things like acupuncture, chiropractic, and so on. I'm using the same quote for a different purpose, and so the question here is, what is the new paradigm? What does it mean, one planet, one parent, one healthcare, and what does the law have to say about it? Now, typically in a room of at least 3 people, there is a clinical syndrome known as post-lawyer stress disorder. So if people here have had encounters with lawyers before, I'm here to dispel that. I'm a friendly lawyer. I used to say I'm a friendly neighborhood lawyer, but not always. You know, when I do dispute resolution, it can vary, but for the most part. So we're on the same page. Okay, so the Internet of Things. Have people heard about the Internet of Things, IoT, or Internet of Everything? Some people say the Internet of Experiences. Some of you may be programming for this as we speak. I'm not a robot, I'm not a humanoid robot, I'm a real person, but this is all coming. So robotics, surgery, so let's talk about some of the top things, right? So for example, in medicine, I think robotic surgery is already here. I have at least one client that's doing machine learning for diagnosis, and they're doing a trial to see whether the machine can have fewer false positives and fewer false negatives and teleradiology, obviously a benefit to the patient and an issue for radiologists. So, you know, artificial intelligence is coming into every profession, including my own, the legal profession. Also, robot companions for elder care. I believe we've already had a movie about that. So when it comes to Hollywood, that's where you see it first, and then it shows up in real life a little bit later, right? I was reading an article the other day about how many predictions about the future Marty McFly got right in Back to the Future, like the iPad. Apparently Marty McFly had an iPad. The only one that I remember is, G-Mom, you really know how to hydrate a pizza. I thought that would have been a great line to say when I was 13. So that's what I remember, but they were good predictions. So some of the legal issues are, who owns the data, right? Whose is it? So there are obviously a lot of concerns about cybersecurity. Somebody hacking your refrigerator and now you can't get food, right? Or the refrigerator starts ordering pizzas, but you're on some of you are probably nutritionists, so you're on a lettuce diet or something, and this would not be good. Or you could blame it on the cyber hacking, but you really ordered the pizza yourself because you reprogrammed your refrigerator. Privacy, so security, data ownership, who owns the data, how do we keep it secure, how do we keep it private, how do we prevent companies from selling your information? Does Amazon already, or any similar company, I'm not just picking on them, do they know more about you and your habits than your best friend? And when you walk down the street, are they going to start, or is any company going to start flashing discount ads at you? How many people have seen the Minority Report? Remember that? With movable data? So that's all coming really soon. Also, liability. Who's in charge if the sensors malfunction? what if something goes wrong? And control. So again, to go back to this issue, let's say the refrigerator is smart and it stops ordering cheesecake because it thinks you're too fat, right? I borrowed that one. So, but any example would do. So let's just take a step back and look at the legal framework. So now that I'm back in private practice as a lawyer, this is the way that I conceptualize the broad range of people that come to me in the health and wellness industry. It's not just medicine, it's also health, and it's a $3.4 trillion industry. And I think about it in terms of products on one side and services on the other. And the reason is because products are more regulated typically by the Federal Food and Drug Administration, FDA. So I don't know if anyone here has patented a medical device or had to fill out an IND or is involved in drug development, but that's the FDA side, right? Also cosmetics, FDA regulated. Also dietary supplements. So when you go to the health food store, you take some vitamins or some Ayurvedic herbs, those would be regulated typically as dietary supplements. And there are issues around the claims, what the manufacturer says is the intended use, how you label it, whether you have the evidence for that. On the other side are services, things like the practice of medicine, medical groups, medical clinics, medical spas, which sort of are a hybrid between medicine and aesthetics, cosmetics, telemedicine, implantable medicine, and then practices like concierge, VIP patients, anti-aging, and integrative and alternative medicine. And typically there's a body of healthcare law that applies to the healthcare services. It's different from the product side. And there are lots and lots of micro niches of law. This is to give you the big picture. Now, how's it going to end? We don't know, but let's talk a little bit about the product side. Let's talk about what we're calling in Silicon Valley, disruptive technologies. Technologies that are disrupting the current paradigm, Uber disrupting taxi fleets, Google disrupting just about everything, people that are 14 and coming out with $1 billion company that gets $1 billion market cap within a year or two. So what this is doing to healthcare is we've got, of course, high touch, and we also have high tech. And we've got a lot more patient engagement. So recently, I was at Stanford MedX, and this was a huge topic. In my day, I used to write ethics papers, and I would argue that autonomy is a very important ethical value, and medical paternalism goes back to the 1800s. It's gone on way too long. You don't just have the doctor with the white coat. You have to take into account what the patient says. This means that if patients are interested in herbal alternatives or chiropractic for low back pain or acupuncture or massage therapy, that it's a good thing to let patients make choices. Nowadays, you just go on the internet and you just have doctor web search, and the patients bring in the information, they challenge their physicians. And not only that, but there are apparently websites where patients can get individual anecdotal evidence that helps them in their search for answers. Now, of course, back when I was at Harvard Medical School, one of the mantras besides evidence-based is anecdote is not evidence, right? Just get a Carl Sagan quote about that. The plural of anecdote is not evidence. But now, basically, they were saying in this conference, anecdotal evidence is good evidence. And in some ways, we don't trust the trials because, for example, when we have rare diseases, we haven't even studied this. We want to know what patients' experiences are, what's worked. There's a huge treasure chest of information. We want to mine it, and we have the tools. So this leads to the quantifiable self. People with their devices, wearable tech, you can figure out how many times a night you snore. You can figure out basically everything that you want to know about what's happening with your health, almost everything. So from a legal perspective, there's some issues. So one of my clients said to me, not only is it hard to tell whether what you're doing is legal, it's hard to tell if it's legal enough. Meaning they don't know, red light, yellow light, green light. You can't just say everything's gray. Actually, everything's orange. Orange is the new gray as a lawyer. Because it's somewhere between red and yellow. It's very typically not going to be green, sometimes green-yellow, but it's not like eating your vegetables, okay? It's red to yellow. So just to give you an example, let's say that you design an app, and with that app, you can have a high-powered magnification on your smartphone. You can take a picture of a dermatological condition. I can't even say that. Let's just say something on your skin. And because I don't want to use the medical terminology for reasons that will become clear. And you send that through the app to this company, and then the company has a doctor on the other side of the world who's not licensed in the US, and they give you a read on it. So that is called telemedicine. Telemedicine, broadly defined, any kind of medicine where you're not physically face-to-face. Of course, you can be face-to-face on a computer screen. So we even have to change the language around that. You're not in your current physical, singular, biological body with the face that you're inhabiting on that body with a patient. That should last for a couple of years, that description. So we call that telemedicine. Now, it turns out that that's in the practice side of medicine. Let me just hold till the end, so I'll just get through. So if the app itself gets smarter and smarter, then you don't need that person on the other side of the phone. And the app tells you, you have a low, medium, or high risk of melanoma. That's different. Now you've got a medical device, because you've replaced the service with a product. This is also what we call by disruptive. You've now disrupted the services industry, and you're on the product side. Now you're on the FDA side, okay? So you'll need to get medical device clearance unless it's exempt, and you also need to be sure that whatever you say this thing can do, it's supported by competent and reliable evidence, scientific evidence. So you must substantiate your claims. So I just got a call, for example, this morning, someone that has a sports, it's like a pair of shorts or something, and they're saying that it protects you against reproductive issues, right? But you can't say that, because you have to substantiate your claims, right? You might say that it protects you if you get knocked down, but the point is you need evidence for everything you say. And in fact, this is an issue on the FDA side. It's an issue on the advertising side, Federal Trade Commission. And it's an issue because there are plaintiff law firms out there that are looking for companies and at the claims they make. And if they see something where they have an opening, they'll attack. So for example, there's a wearable company that has a sleep tracking device, and it turns out that there were questions about the evidence, that it's not quite measuring accurate with 100% accuracy what amount of sleep you're getting at night. And so, not competent and reliable evidence, the test is inadequate, the test is inaccurate, therefore people were damaged, they got less sleep than they thought they were measuring through the quantifiable self, and this cost money. And you take the amount of money in damages, you multiply it by a big number of plaintiffs in a class action, and you get a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. So companies do have to mind the evidence and be very careful about the claims that they make. FDA's done a couple things that have helped make the landscape a little bit clearer. So I don't know if people in this room into apps. I mean, probably, right? Generationally, everyone's into apps. So the question here is, going back to that example of the skin app, when does an app become a medical device, and when is it just something on your phone that you can click and play with, and the manufacturer does not have to worry about the FDA? Big issue for all the developers at Silicon Valley, because they'd rather not raise the money for FDA clearance if they don't have to. So FDA simply created a menu here, not a mobile medical app. I think this is where I could get fancy and use this laser thing. There we go. Not a medical app, so it is, it isn't, and we're not sure, but we have enforcement discretion, so we can decide, so you do have to think about it. So bottom line is, what is a mobile medical app? It basically is something that either transforms your phone into a medical device, because it adds something on, and the phone is basically like a tricorder, right? A tricorder is not just something that you call your family members on. It actually gives you diagnostic read. Or if the claim is that it cures, diagnoses, or treats disease. So, for example, if you attach a sensor or lead to display ECG, you've got a medical device. Transforms the platform into a device. If you measure the degree of tremor caused by Parkinson's, and then this one we just did, analyzes images of a skin lesion. Now, the ones in this column are basically, you see what they are, they're reference books and tools, and they automate office operations. They're generic aids to people. So FDA's basically said, we're taking these out of our zone where we regulate, and you can put these on the market. And then lots and lots of things are still in this category, like motivational guidance to quit smoking. We don't know which box it's going to fall in. It depends on what you add on. Then in this other innovation, FDA said low risk general wellness products, we're not going to regulate as medical devices. Now, it's got to meet both criteria. It's got to be low risk. So for example, exercise equipment, video games, some of the wearables and apps, they say low risk, right? Video game, different from something invasive, unsafe, unusable, or not biocompatible, like a laser. Then the second criterion, which is interesting, it's got to be for general wellness. So here we are again, promoting healthy weight. We're talking about general wellness. Now the thing is, even though your claims about general wellness, you can make allusions to longevity, to lifestyle habits, to things that will help you live longer, or if you don't get them right, you can have a risk of not living as long. So, but you have to be careful. So, for example, you can say healthy weight, healthy eating, healthy sleep. You can even say that it increases the flow of qi, or qi, right? But you cannot say diagnoses or treats autism, obesity, anxiety, ADD. Why? What are those things on the bottom? Those are medical words. So as soon as you get into the medical terminology, you're not talking about wellness, you're talking about medicine. Now, as scientists in the field of healthcare and health prevention, does this legal distinction make sense to you? That there's a difference between medicine and health? You can nod yes, no, or you can do a head shake either way. There's no real answer, but I'm gonna actually shift gears a little, and I'll come back to my thoughts about that at the end. So let me just give you this quote. I love this quote. The difficult, we do it once. The impossible takes a little bit longer. So this is really what we're talking about. We're on this exponential curve, right? Where things are becoming, they're accelerating and they're converging. Technology is converging. And the singularity is near. So the singularity is an idea that several people developed. Ray Kurzweil is someone who developed this thought even further. And what he means is paradigm shifts are becoming so immediate and they're so extreme that they represent what he calls a rupture in the fabric of human history. So a while ago there was a book that came out, I think it was in the 70s, it was called Future Shock. People would be shocked by the future in the 70s. Well, now we look at those haircuts and the bell bottoms and it's shocking from a fashion perspective, but we're not shocked by what happened in the 80s. But the point is, things are now just happening faster and faster and faster and faster. So we almost can't call it a paradigm shift because you turn around, there's another one. So the singularity is a point where machine intelligence exceeds human intelligence and machines can pass for human beings. So it's not us versus them. We're going to merge with them. We're not going to know what part of us is human, what part of us is machine. We're already very intermeshed with our technology. I recently heard a statistic that people touch their smartphone. Would you know, take a guess how many times a day? What? 150. That's a good guess, though. It's a jelly bean test, right?
I mean, if you're looking at teenagers.
If you're looking at teenagers, that statistic has got to go way up, right? So, you know, what if we hugged each other? Well, that'd be a lot, right? But just think about it. The number of times you touch your phone versus the number of times you touch a human being. That's interesting to think about from the perspective of health, wellness, and medicine. I don't have the data on that. This is just totally anecdotal. But I surmise that if we, had more, more free hugs would be good. There's a very optimistic view about the singularity. This is a good thing because the idea is that what it's going to do, it's going to free us from our biological selves, these bodies that age and disease, and where there's sickness and infirmity and difficulty. And I can't teleport from here back home. I've got to slug it out in traffic. And I'm going to be able to transcend that once I can download my brain into a computer and then upload that into something else, which can get there before dinner. People are very optimistic about that. So that's the positive side. That's a utopian future. We also have a dystopian future, which is that we have data everywhere. We could have a runaway artificial intelligence. Nick Bostrom of Oxford University uses this example. He says, if we tell an AI program, go ahead and your function is to maximize paperclips production, using whatever resources are at your disposal. And we forget to tell the AI, by the way, just use the junkyard next to the factory. And they go out beyond the factory, they go out to the town, and the mayor can't stop them. And it just sounds like one of those old science fiction movies, right? And the AI goes ahead and says, oh, humans, I can make paperclips out of anything. And then it goes beyond the planet, runaway AI. So we actually have the power to destroy not only the planet, but the cosmos. And so that's why this has been picked up by Elon Musk and other thinkers, and they say the most important thing that we have to think about today is how to reduce the existential risk to humanity. So I think that's a relevant thing since we're talking about prevention, wellness, health, the risk to humanity. So there are lots and lots of technologies that we could include on this. They're not in and of themselves bad, it's how we use them. Biohacking, BFF-OS stands for OS is operating system. So if you've seen the movie Her, people whose best friend, they have a relationship with their technology. So this is predicted by Ray Kurzweil also. So there are a couple of issues, and I trace really the logarithmic advancement of medicine from house visits to office visits to online telemedicine. I talked about the apps moving from services to products, moving up to wearable technology, quantifiable self. Virtual reality is very much in the news. Virtual reality for diagnostic purposes, huge market. For treatment, we're talking about Parkinson's, mapping through virtual reality, visits through your humanoid robot, brain-to-brain communication, telepathy through technology, and then the downloadable self. This is where it's going, and it's exponential. And of course, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So the problem is that law can be useful. You know, I pointed out how the FDA has done some useful things in sorting out the regulations so that we can have more freedom with the apps, with the low-risk general wellness devices. But basically, this change is just, the train is moving too fast. It eclipses the power of law to regulate. Because law is made either by legislators after careful deliberation, by statute, or by judges through case law, or by medical boards and agencies. And we work at a certain pace, and the technology is just much faster, especially if the technology is self-empowered and able to accelerate exponentially. So we need wisdom, and we need to be sure that we can manage all of this. And you know, for answers, I mean, I think we're really in a race here. We've got technology on one hand, consciousness on the other. We've got our intellectual intelligence and our emotional and spiritual intelligence. And this all has to come together. So ultimately, the evolution of law, medicine, and health has something to do with the evolution of humanity itself. And this requires wisdom, it requires thinking about the planet in new ways, and that's where we are. So I'll close with that, and I look forward to your questions. And also tell me who you are so that I know your discipline. I know that there's a lot of brain power in this room. So just tell me, so I get a sense of where you're coming from and what you're interested in. So you had a question. You've been very patient.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Did I answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. My name is Michelle Koser. I'm an internal medicine primary care doctor, and then I'm also a postdoctoral fellow here.
Great.
Oh, and I went for recruitment school also.
Great. I'm glad I answered your question. This talk is airtight, I'm telling you. I just answered a question, and I'm impressed. No, but thank you. Feel free, don't be shy.
I'm just wondering, sorry, I'm Ben Prissinger, I'm one of the postdocs here, but actually a city planner by training, so it's sort of not also medically oriented. But I wonder, you kind of show the graph, and there's this sort of like inevitable linearity to like the way that this is happening, and then it's sort of remind me of like the previous slides that talked about the good and the bad, which it's like pretty normative, like whether those things are good or bad, you know. And it just, but like ethics sort of gets into these questions. So
Absolutely.
I think ethics also challenges the linearity of that progression, because if society chooses that something is unethical or highly ethical, it will kind of impede or slow things. Or is your sort of suggestion that like technology is able to operate outside of ethics at a pace that it doesn't matter? Like it doesn't matter if society thinks that something is good or bad.
Sure. This is a conversation, by the way, so I'm standing just so you can see me, but you know, I really welcome your views, because I think these are multidisciplinary questions, and you know, that chart is made up. I mean, these are not data points.
Right, no, absolutely.
You know, if I could figure out a way to create a 4D, you know, rotating spiral and something, that might be interesting. But I mean, I think